Riley, how's it going? Got your down the line swing analysis here. Looking at it, just want to go over a few concepts that we talked about in your lesson to kind of give you some keys to work on if you have forgotten them since the other day that we worked on them. But looking at this backswing, pretty good. I'd like to see the club head stay out a little bit longer as a preference, just because it starts to get your right forearm rotated a little bit too internal, and then in your case it stays there. So if you could keep that club head a little bit out longer, and I'll show you what that looks like, but um, I just think because it gets a little bit inside here, and it gets a little bit too over or too close to your head here, so it kind of goes inside and across too much with the direction where the hands go. I'd like to see the hands be about right here. I think that's a really solid position right there. And you get there with when we go later on in the lesson, I'll show you. But anyway, so where your hands go here, this is my box concept, or just to kind of help explain where I want to see the club head go, or the sequencing of what should happen in the downswing. So you're in a pretty good position, better than when we started. Hands are higher, all that jazz. I just think I'd like to see your hands a little bit deeper, just meaning deeper more towards your heel stance line, so a little bit more over here, but still getting above your head. Just because the height of your, just because your stature and how long your arms are, they can definitely still get above your head. Next, looking at this, I want to see the club head work on this side of the box and the hands to work towards this bottom corner. So the club head stays back while the hands go out. Now, depending on the rotation of your forearms, your trail shoulder, and your wrist angles, that's going to have a huge impact on how steep or how shallow that club shaft is coming down. In your case, you get your right shoulder a little bit internally rotated. You get a little bit of extension, meaning cupping in your wrist, and you pull down a little bit. That's why this club, rather than going towards the left side, the club head, rather than going towards the left side of that line, it goes a little bit too vertical, and you can see you're way on top of the plane here, and then even at last parallel, the club head starts to get outside your hands, which is a very steep condition. So in response to that, you start backing up and increasing your shoulder plane, making your shoulders really vertical, which stops your rotation, which gives you face-to-path issues. So you can block it, shank it, pull it, whatever from there. So our goal is to try to get you in a better backswing position so that you can pivot correctly and get cleaner face-to-path cleaner face-to-path contact, and as a result, have a lot more consistent shots. So in a perfect world, what we're looking for, this is Henrik Stenson over here on the right, and as I mentioned, hands work in, club head works out a little bit. That's just the sequence I like to see for particular swings, such as yours, where the club head starts to get a little bit behind the hands in the backswing. If you can keep the hands in and club head out, such as Henrik is doing right here, but you're still working up the plane, so your hands are not going too in, you're just going right up the plane line, the club head stays out. So as a result, then in the backswing, you can see that he's got a very vertical shaft position, but his left arm is still in, 10 or 15 degrees here. He looks to be hitting about a 6 or 7 iron or something like that, or 5 iron, something like that. So you want the left arm to be in, but I don't want the club head to be drastically behind the hands here. And as you can see at the top of his backswing, if I remove that line there, he's got that handle, and the handle in his hands are now over his right heel, whereas yours are more kind of over the ball of your foot. And you get there, you actually do a really good job. You get in this deep position right here, but then you kind of let it float over there. And that, to me, that move right there kind of causes some of your start of your downswing transition issues with the shaft being too steep. So if we watch Henrik here now, if I remove that line, I can show you the box of him, and he's going to be about right there. We can even increase this a little bit, but he's about right there. Now he's going to get this. You're going to see that this club head is going to fall on this side while his hands start to go on this side. So the hands work out as the club head lays back or shallow. So the angle of his club shaft, if I even continue this further, see at this position, his club shaft is pointing about there. So slightly vertical, more vertical than his address position. And then but he's still getting deep hands in, so his hands are still working to the inside. He's not just picking his hands straight up and working them towards the midpoint of his foot or closer to his head. So he's still turning in the backswing to get his hands deep. Now in the downswing, he's going to have a club shaft that more resembles closer to that yellow line, the original address position, meaning he had a steeper backswing and a shallower downswing. So his club head's going to work on the left side of the box behind him, and now his hands are above the shaft plane, but the club head is behind his hands, but still on top. So this is, by definition, what I like to call it, is basically an on-plane or above-plane shallow swing. He's not underneath of it and stuck. He's on-plane but shallow. And how he achieved that is that he had his hands deep enough in the backswing, so he got his hands in enough and up enough that allowed them to work out enough and the club head to lay back enough. And how that he did that in addition to the backswing is he does it with rotation. So if I clear all these lines, Henrik does a really beautiful job of rotating and not pulling down, so he's not yanking down. That club head is, that handle of that golf club is not being pulled down towards his right hip pocket or jamming it in a slot, or he is actually letting his hands work out towards the ball. And because he didn't pull down on the shaft, that club head then lays down behind him and shallows nicely, so that at this position, last parallel, he's right on plane and is not outside of his hands or too far behind him. He generally hits a pretty neutral ball flight. If he was going to hit a draw, it might be a little bit more like right there. If he was going to hit a cut, it maybe would be a fraction outside of his hands, but never too far outside the hands, because then that gets too steep and just causes a problem. Whereas on your swing here, as you see, we start to get a little bit outside the hands, which isn't necessarily in itself a terrible thing, but the difference is just look at how much different the rotation is of Henrik. Your head is more down, you're more hunched over, and he's a lot more passive and more rotation, which is kind of what we originally worked on with the pivot, getting that left knee to open up, getting that club to basically just stay up in place at the top of the backswing, feel like it stays there. You can even feel like you curl that shaft a little bit here, getting it maybe a little bit. So take it to the top, it's pointing down the line, pause, bow the left wrist or flex the left wrist to get that club shaft or the club head to kind of wobble to the left or outside the box, as I was showing you. And then from there, pivot and open up, and you'll look a little bit like Henrik Stenson is here. So another drill you can add to that, or what we did, just to show you, what I just mentioned right there of bowing and flexing, this right here was when you put the golf swing hanger on. And you did a really good job here on this particular swing. If I fast forward this, put that right there. You do a lot better job at keeping the club head out and hands in on this particular swing. So on this swing, if I forward it, your hands are a lot better depth. They're still a little in. You can still get them a little deeper, but this is a really good position that I've seen you in. I mean, since we've started working together, this is one of the better positions I've seen you in. Hands are in a nice position. Wrist is bowed nicely. This one you didn't have that fall off where your hands started working towards your head. They just stayed kind of nicely back there. What I'm referring to was this video right here. If we look at the two and zoom in fast, you can see that right here they look like they're pretty similar position, but this swing, your hands ever so slightly, if that's where I want you at, that's awesome. Pretty similar position to this one right there, you know. But then you kind of let it drift a little bit and you get it over a little bit, so they work a little bit towards you kind of fall over, work your weight towards the balls of your feet a little bit, and that kind of shifts that hands a little bit more towards the balls of your feet, whereas I want it towards your heel line, which is just a deeper position. So think of it this way: the more your hands go in the backswing, the more they can go out in the downswing. If they're above your head, you're going to have to do some crazy shallowing with your elbows and maneuvers, a la Jim Furyk, to get that club on plane. But if you get them in a nice, neutral, deep position, much like you are on the left, then you watch this club coming down. Now you can see that that club head drops behind that line. Now at this last position I mentioned, see how you're above the line, but now you're in a much shallower position. Your body's a lot better position here. If I can take this one, draw that line, just to show you the differences. So you work out a little bit too much, a lot more vertical, just a huge difference in where your body's at. And the big thing is how much more matched up you are. See how much higher your right arm is on the right here than that shaft is right there in that image, whereas on the one on the left here, you get a lot more rotation and get over to where you were at the top. So you just clear it a lot better, much better swing. I really like what that golf hanger did. It just got you in a better wrist condition, and that wrist condition at the top allows you to open up and lay that club shaft down appropriately rather than pulling down on it and getting too vertical. So it all kind of comes, it's all tied in. The Tour Striker ball drill that we did was designed to get your elbows closer together. That's going to get you in a tighter position at the top. The second part we worked on was the pivot, getting your knees to separate and get your left knee outside your left foot with your body not sliding and shoulders working vertical. Now, if you get in a better backswing position and work your pivot with your left knee getting outside your left foot, and then getting that club shaft in a position where it is, such as with the hanger right there, then you can start to lay that club shaft down and look like what I showed you with Henrik Stenson. Even show you a couple more models here of players that do this. It's not just exclusive to Henrik Stenson. Another person, I mean, I've got a bunch of them. Here's another kind of good example of a player working at, say, inside and vertical. So see, he gets his hands in, but the club shaft very vertical. So now you can see that butt end is over his, basically over his right heel. And then from here, watch how, this is Camilo Villegas. Watch how his hands go out towards the ball, but that club head is going to go on this side, while the hands go on this side. You watch this. Club head goes, hands go out, club head goes there. This is how the club shallows. And he's doing this with rotation. See, he's not pulling down that handle. He's not yanking that down, lagging the club. Gets it down the line, club head lays down. So he goes from vertical, shallow. Vertical, shallow. That's Camilo Villegas. And not every player does this. I mean, you don't have to. I would say a lot of players, have on-plane swings, and a lot of players go vertical to shallow. Some go shallow to steep. That's kind of a Kuchar move. He's kind of the exception, but I just think that for you, because you kind of get your hands in and get in a little position here, I like to see you get much like here. Hands in, club head out. See, he's right on plane here. So this is someone who does a pretty good job. But the difference is notice how when he takes it away, that club head really never gets behind. At this position in your swing, your club head's more over here. That kind of gets your arm in a different position, so the right arm. So look how straight Camilo Villegas' right arm is. But he's still, if he had that Tour Striker ball, it would be right in between him. Another example would be, here's a good one. Graham McDowell, same deal. Elbows real close. Draw the line right here. He does a real perfect on. He might have one of my favorite takeaways. He just goes right up at the same rate, bang, right on. Club head's just slightly above. Hands are working in. If his heels are here, his hands are going to be somewhere over in that area. Does a pretty good job. And as you can see, Watch this. You can start to see his hands are going to go out. Hands go out, club head goes left. Hands go out, club head goes left. So hands go towards the ball, but the club shallows. And he's doing it with rotation. So his left knee is getting there. Look how much rotation he has. And I showed you this one specifically because in this position, if we're looking at this, look how level his elbows are. Now, granted, yours are hard to see because you're wearing all black and our bays are a little darker. If we were outside, we could probably get a little bit better image here. But just notice the angle of his club shaft coming down compared to when we started with yours. Oops, you had just a big difference here. Your shaft is a little bit more vertical, so you kind of go the opposite. You kind of go shallow to steep, as in I want you to kind of go steep to shallow, and that's just, I know it sounds crazy, but that's just how the sequence is of what we need it to be. So hands in, club head out in the backswing, and that's what we showed you here. When you put this stick right here, you did a pretty good job of this. You know, trying to get the hands on this side and trying to keep the club head right there. So if I clear those two lines, see if you do that here. So on the takeaway here, get that club head up nicely there, but I still want those hands to work in. Yeah, you did a pretty good job right here. And this is where we segmented this with this drill. You hit this one, was kind of a shank because this was one of the first ones you did, but you took it to the top, you paused, so you're trying to get your hands in a deep position, you paused, and then you rotated that club head back, laid it back, and you can watch, see how your forearm rotated? See how your right forearm went? It went a little bit this way, not this way. It went laid back a little bit this way, and that has an impact on where the club head goes. So you try to lay it back there. This one wasn't quite your best effort because it still came out a little bit, but this was one of your first ones. But that's not a bad drill. I still think that this right here was probably, in my opinion, probably the best that you could probably do is just work on, working with this swing hanger, getting that left wrist bowed. Even Graham McDowell right here, he's got a bowed left wrist. So that looks pretty similar position. He's got a shorter backswing, as I mentioned in that first part of the video, is that a shorter backswing could get you in there. Main thing is I want the hands to get enough height so they can have more speed. So that's always a good thing. So they're getting the height above your head, just because you're tall, but then they're also getting the depth. So they need to be, from this vantage point, I want your hands or the butt end of the club to be basically, if you drew a straight line from your heel, about right in there. And Graham McDowell's picture here is off a little bit. The camera angle's a little bit to the right, but he's basically in on his right heel here. And that club head's laid down because of his wrist angles. His club shaft is in that position because his left wrist is bowed, not because the shaft is flat. And it also has to do with the length of his swing. So this position gives him the ability to rotate because his left wrist is bowed. He's worked his hands in deep enough. Now they can work out enough. Every golf swing in the downswing has a component where the hands are working down and out, but it's almost incrementally. You don't want them to feel like they're only working out, and you don't want them to only feel like they're only working down. It's just like, from the top of the swing, it'd be like 1 degree down, 1 degree out, 1 degree down, 1 degree out. And that is all tied in with the pivot and where the backswing is. And then the backswing, where it's located, is, the condition it's in has to do with how close your elbows are together, the condition of your wrists, and the length of the backswing too also has some impact on that. I mean, there's a variety of things. I don't want to talk for too long here, as I've already talked for about 19 minutes. But you can see I'm just trying to give you some examples of what that looks like. I mean, here's another tall player, Dustin Johnson. I mean, it's not. These are just things that I've noticed that really good ball striker. Now DJ gets his left. He doesn't get his hands in quite enough, but he's got so much wrist flexion and so much rotation that he's got a unique one. He actually drops his hands in back a little bit from P4 to P5. So from the top of the backswing to here, he's actually falling back to where you're at right here. So he gets them up a little bit, but that's the beauty of getting your hands up high. You have more time to make a correction. When you get your hands in low over here, much like you did, you don't have enough time. They're deep enough, but they're not high enough, so the speed that they travel is just reduced. So you can see DJ is in here, but you can see hands work out, club head lays back, has a lot of rotation, chest opens up, so much so his chest is opening up so much that he actually releases his head, something that Henrik Stenson does, something that you could add to it as well. But I'll leave you with that. Like I said, man, I could talk about this for a while here. So all you're trying to do is get deep with the hands, get the club head to come down behind the hands as the hands work out, and the hands are working out because the rotation and the pivot are taking it there. Kind of all starting from that left knee working out, or the basket getting dropped or separated between your knees. Take a look at this, man. Hope this helps. I think you're really getting in a good position. I really like what this hanger did to your swing right here. If you could maybe do that, maybe put the basket between your legs to help you work with the pivot, and really just work on that. If you feel like you're struggling with it, shoot me some video, and I'm here to help, man. We'll talk soon.